How's it going, folks? Stu here. New Scorsese. That's all. I don't need to say much else. New Scorsese. So, Killers of the Flower Moon, it is the new Martin Scorsese film based on the non-fiction novel of the same name, I believe, which I have not read. You'll be very shocked to hear. It is a 3.5-hour-long Scorsese epic about the murders of the Osage tribe in the 1920s in America, who were being systematically picked off over oil money, essentially. This is either going to be a very difficult or easy film to review here, because I'm going to get it straight out the bat. Scorsese has delivered another absolute masterclass in pretty much all aspects of filmmaking, because Killers of the Flower Moon just knocked my little socks off. I thoroughly loved this film. Goodness gracious. I'm not even entirely sure where to begin this one, so good luck in the edit, later me. You're gonna smash it, I'm sure. I don't want to say too much about the plot of this one. We're going to keep it nice and broad, just mainly because there's a lot of plot in here, as you can imagine from a 3.5-hour-long Scorsese epic. But generally, it is about a character played by Leo DiCaprio, who has just returned from war to stay with his uncle, and he ends up meeting and marrying Lily Gladstone's character, Molly Burkhart, who is an Osage tribe member. And without going into too much of a history lesson, because frankly, who the hell do I think I am to be qualified to give such a history lesson on YouTube to anybody? Essentially, at this time in the United States, at this part of the country, there is a lot of oil under the land, and because of various different legal protocols in place, the Osage tribe earn a lot of money from that oil because it's their land. And so white Americans, being white Americans, as they have been throughout all of history, are exploiting this for their own worth. And the first thing that I immediately really loved about what Martin Scorsese is pulling off here in Killers of the Flower Moon is the kind of perspective of the film, because he's clearly been very careful and has spoken about going through different rewrites over the years in giving the right sort of voice to the right people in this film. It's a film which you could absolutely see going many different ways, having potentially been a true crime podcast or a true crime series, as modern audiences have grown to love. You often tend to lose sight of who the real victims are in certain situations, and Scorsese is able to keep the Osage voice prominent in the film, even when the plot is going through so many different sort of twists and turns and, you know, very Scorsese-like webs of characters. People are shifting around the chessboard, so to speak. We've got kind of a bunch of different genres thrown into the mix here. I mean, it's a Western film, I suppose, most primarily, as Scorsese has mentioned he wanted to do with the film, but also shares a lot of characteristics with Scorsese's most notable kind of crime work that he's done through the years. And it's really interesting seeing him weave all of that into this story in this specific time period and location and people. And that makes for an incredibly gripping watch. Watching Scorsese, an 80-year-old man at this point, still deliver just absurd direction that is also able to consistently deliver in an emotional department. As with pretty much all of Martin Scorsese's films at this point, he is very committed to creating very fleshed out characters on screen. He's very sympathetic to his characters, even when his characters are doing terrible things and are clearly terrible people. Perhaps sympathetic's the wrong word, but he's certainly never shy of fully realizing characters and giving them motivations that are clear, but also allowing them to do everything they need to do on screen to create some challenging and difficult situations. For instance, our lead character played by Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm not going to say too much about his character here, just because it was a big surprise for me what his character ended up being in the film and how his character ended up being. But that character is one which throughout the 3-hour runtime goes to so many different places that were consistently surprising me, and all just add layer by layer into this ultimately very rich, very troubled and tragic and sad character. It was a very good avoidance, again, of shifting too much perspective onto just the white guys in the film and making him this big, typical Leo DiCaprio lead. But alongside him in the film is Lily Gladstone, who you're going to hear and probably have heard a lot about in regards to this film. She is just absolutely fantastic here as Molly Burkhart. She brings this evolving sort of charm and sadness to the screen in her character, and I really loved watching her sort of navigate the tapestry of horrible, tragic stuff that's going on in this film that Martin Scorsese has set up here. She dips in and out of the narrative, but I think crucially, Scorsese never lets her just sort of drift away into the background. There's just this very clear and immediately apparent sense of being worn down, you know, but not in a way which feels manipulative or exploitative to us as viewers. It's very careful not to just tread into the character that just occasionally pops up and is sad, you know. That would have felt entirely the wrong way and an entirely misjudged way of doing something like this. But there are also many other people in the film delivering very committed and fantastic performances, and one of the notable surprises for me was Robert De Niro. And I don't say surprise in the kind of, wow, I can't believe Robert De Niro can act sense, but I have felt that as of late, sometimes he just kind of pops up in films and he'll kill it, but he won't always be there. And it's rare that he gets a big, meaty, juicy character role. Obviously, Scorsese worked with him previously in The Irishman. He was fantastic in that. But his character for me, I guess in a very similar way to Leo DiCaprio, but maybe not quite as much, was just a big surprise for me in terms of the way that the film utilizes him and what he's doing here. He's in it a lot, and he's one of the main sort of catalysts as a character for the film's themes of manipulation and greed and power between the white people and the Osage tribe at the time. But the other crucial thing that Scorsese has pulled off here, as he usually tends to do, is making this long runtime feel like it absolutely just flies by. There's often a lot of discussion about runtimes being too long nowadays. You know, I'm a big fan of 90-minute tight thrillers and things like that, but I'm also a keen advocate that films are pretty much as long as they need to be, and this is testament to the fact that there can be very successful, effective 3-hour-plus films that use their runtime just expertly. And there isn't a second wasted in this thing, and part of the reason it pulls that off so well is in its editing, which, surprise, surprise, is just impeccable. Scorsese has teamed up again here with longtime collaborator Thelma Schoonmaker, who is one of the best editors in the business. I don't need to explain that to anyone at this point. And she is so essential for the way that this film is able to pull off the stuff that it does pull off. I guess I shouldn't really be surprised at this point, but I suppose it's a testament to how great she is as an editor that she's able to still make me feel kind of surprised by the edit. Because on the one hand, the editing in this film is incredibly blunt, which is a fantastic way of pulling out all of the atrocities that have been done to these people, and it's a very great way of highlighting and reminding us as viewers of the themes that are being displayed here. But it's also naturally just filled with energy. There isn't a moment in this film which doesn't flow expertly between sequences, between character beats, between dialogue. It's the exact same reason why the films she's edited with Scorsese before have worked. But it is one of the key reasons why Scorsese's films, despite being long and despite dealing with a lot of information often very quickly, you know, lots of characters interacting with each other that never stop and are just like, hey, let's remind everyone what we're doing here. You've got to sort of follow it all to keep up with it all. But there's a very fine line between keeping viewers on track without hand-holding, without just sort of dragging them through and telling them what to think or feel at different points. And I think key to that as well is the things that Scorsese chooses to sort of tell us about the historical setting at the time and the way he chooses to tell us those things. Characters discuss the fact that oil is such a big driving motivator for what's going on at the time, but visually Scorsese gets that across to us very quickly in the film with that opening, with the Osage people dancing in the oil from the ground. And the film is littered with moments like that, which do a fantastic job of very quickly getting us on board with things that are happening historically at the time, or things that are happening in the environment around. I mean, the film sort of moves through Western to thriller to kind of courtroom stuff, but never loses sight of the characters that are being pulled into the picture and where we are following those characters through this narrative. Part of the reason it's so good at that is because Scorsese is so good at delivering information in a visual way that complements the way that characters are talking about things. And the ending of this thing was a big surprise, but one which I think it just, once you see it, it just makes entire sense that it was done like that. You just sort of think, yeah, of course. How else were you going to end this thing, Martin? And it pulls everything together really satisfyingly and really fantastically in a way which feels different to the way that Scorsese has pulled his threads together in previous films. But the key thing is that, yes, Scorsese has delivered another absolute masterclass in direction, in sprawling epic stories, but also in a real thing that has happened that not a lot of people know about, that needs attention and that needs reckoning with. And this film is a really fantastic sort of pedestal for a certain voice, whilst also delivering a very satisfying fiction film. I cannot stress this enough, guys. Quickest 3.5 hours ever. I didn't need a toilet once. I'm amazed at my own bladder. But what about you guys? Have you seen Killers of the Flower Moon? Did you catch it at the festival? Have you seen it anywhere else that's been showing through the year? Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. We'll have a little chat. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see me talk about more shit, go ahead and click subscribe. The button is down there for that. I will see you guys very, very soon for some more thoughts on more films. But until next time, Martin Scorsese, Martin Scorsese.